finish Lithuania, and then we're gonna do some really interesting stuff on India. Are we good to get started? Okay, everyone, let's get started. So, hello, we're going to start now. So, I apologize in advance, but you're stuck with me for 2 hours today. Sorry about that. I know, it's so hard. It's going to be terrible. So what we're going to do today, just a little roadmap. So we started Lithuania last week, sorry, and we are going to finish Lithuania now. And then we are going to watch a video, which Ray very wonderfully brought for us, about a group of Jews in India. And after we watch the video, my feeling is that's going to be about break time. And then we're going to come back and talk about the Jews of India. And India presents a very interesting situation for us because there are 7 distinct groups of Jews in India, and they're all different from each other. So that's going to be an interesting conversation. Has anyone here been to India and learned about the Jewish communities in India? Okay, great. So before we start the Jews of India, maybe you'll give us your impressions of what it was like, and then we'll start the Jews of India. Okay, right now we're going to finish Lithuania. So we left off last week with the Khmelnytsky massacres in 1648 and to 1657 in what is now the Ukraine. So it's not exactly Lithuania, but the ramifications of those massacres were enormous in the entire region. By 17, well, let me continue. And around this time, the yeshivot began to be established in Lithuania. And I believe we talked for a moment last week about Moses Isserlis, who's very important to our conversation, because remember, Orthodox Jews now consult the Shulchan Aruch in order to find out what the law is. And the Shulchan Aruch was a law code written in 1500 by Joseph Caro. And there were basically 3 large law codes written. The first was by Maimonides, then by Joseph ben Asher, and then by Joseph Caro. The first 2 were too long, and Jews didn't use them. And Maimonides never told us where he got his information from. He just said, the law is this. And the rabbi said, who says? Where are your sources? You didn't quote anything. You didn't tell us why you say that's the law. We're just supposed to decide because you say it's the law, it's the law? No, thank you very much. Joseph Caro writes a third one around 1500, and it's the shortest of the 3. And it becomes the law book, the law code. And it is in use right this minute in the Orthodox communities. The problem with all 3 law codes is that they were written by Sephardic rabbis. And as we all know, there are differences within customs for Sephardic and Ashkenazic. The most easiest accessible for us right at this moment would be to mention on Passover. Kitniot. If you are a Sephardic Jew, in those lands on Passover, you're eating rice and legumes because that's what you have. That's your staple. If you are in Poland in April and it hasn't gotten warm yet, you are definitely not eating rice and legumes. You're eating potatoes and cabbage. So, rice, legumes, these were called kitniot. and they were forbidden for Ashkenazic Jews. The main reason is because how do you receive rice? You receive it in a large bag, a large burlap bag, right? Same thing with dried beans, etc. And there is clearly the opportunity, if you are storing those bags, for a bag to open up and contaminate something else or become contaminated. So therefore, the rabbi said, no kitniot. And so if you're an Ashkenazic Jew and you want to find out what are the laws of Passover, and you read Joseph Caro's Shulchan Aruch, it says to you, rice and legumes are forbidden to you. So what do we serve at Passover? So Moses Isserles was a very famous Polish rabbi, and he wrote down in the Shulchan Aruch what Ashkenazic Jews do. So where the law says the Sephardim eat rice and legumes, we Ashkenazim do not. We eat, it's forbidden to us. And so now, all of a sudden, this law code that was written by Sephardic rabbis and was applicable to Sephardim became accessible to Ashkenazim as well. So Moses Isserles was a very, very famous and very important figure in our tradition. Now, with the beginnings of these yeshivot in Lithuania, we had very strong Talmudic scholarship, and we had very prominent responsa literature. Responsa literature, remember, means that when a community has a problem or a question that hasn't already been addressed by Jewish law, either in the Talmud or by a previous responsum, they write a letter, they write a she'ela, a question, to the rabbis, and they say, what do we do about this? And the rabbis of these yeshivot, who were very, very scholarly, could then issue a responsa, a response to the question that says, okay, the law is this, you should do this. This started from way, 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 way back. We had this, first of all, Nazarene communities, Jews for Jesus, when they began to move out into the world, they wrote back to Paul, and they said, what do we do? And Paul wrote letters telling them what to do. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, to the Romans, very, very, very famous letters. And then with the Talmudic academies in Sura and Pumbedita, Jewish communities wrote to them and said, what do we do? And they got answers from the scholars in Sura and Pumbedita. Okay. So these yeshivot were very heavily involved in Talmud study. And perhaps the most famous of all people in this age was the Vilna Gaon. And a Gaon is like genius, the genius from Vilna. And his name was Elijah ben Solomon. And we know Rabbi Shochet is descended from him. That's why he's so brilliant. He's so darn brilliant. This is my rabbi. When I have a question, when I have a problem, I go to only one person, and that's Rabbi Shochet, because he's beyond brilliant, beyond, and the biggest mensch on the planet. Okay, and so his academies were run in the sort of analytical Lithuanian style. And these folks were called the Mitnagdim. And as a response to them, we had the Hasidim develop, Hasidic Jews. And why? Because what happened was, these people in the academy were very, very learned. Very learned. Well, what if you were just this kind of average Jew in the countryside? You're farming, you're milking your cows, you're doing this, whatever it is it takes to survive. You don't have the opportunity to go into Vilnius, and study Talmud. You don't have the education or the background to go in and read through this Talmudic material. So what are you going to do? You're completely left out of this whole equation. And so the Baal Shem Tov came in and said, look, this isn't what God wants. God doesn't want you to sit at a table with a black hat and a black coat and study for 24 hours a day. That's not what God wants. God wants you to go out in the world and be joyful and live your life and be happy and express gratitude to God in all ways. Find God everywhere in your life. And so probably the fundamental change for Hasidim is that they focused on ecstatic prayer, dancing in the fields, praying loudly to God, beautiful singing, lots of kavanah, heart in your prayer. And we see that carried on even today. The main difference between the Orthodox, which you probably would relate to modern Orthodox. In other words, an Orthodox individual, but who wears normal clothes, has a normal profession in the world, and the no problem. That'll be coming up. Well, is there a way to stop and we'll start? There we go. Oh. So in the modern world, modern Orthodoxy focuses on study. Hasidim focus on ecstatic prayer. Yes, prayer is important to modern Orthodoxy as well, but if you rank the two, it's study. Yes, study is important to the Hasidim, but if you rank the two, it's ecstatic prayer. And remember what our tradition is now after the destruction of the Second Temple: prayer, study, and acts of kindness. Al shlosha devarim, al haTorah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al gemilut chasadim. Right? Prayer, study, and acts of kindness. That's what it means to be Jewish today. We are engaged in those three activities. So, following this tension between the students of the Vilna Gaon, the Talmudic students, and the Hasidic students, there is that same tension a little bit today, in the sense that the Hasidim focus on, the dancing Chabad rabbis on the Chabad telethon. That gives you a little bit of an indication. It's about joy. It's about finding joy for God and finding God in every part of your life. It's a beautiful philosophy. Also, study in our tradition is a beautiful philosophy. It's all beautiful. It's all good. Okay. Yes. Of course. I know. It's a big pain in the tuchus.
I'm going to stop asking.
We have to be nice to our people at home. They are out there.
Okay. So, Rabbi, my experience with the Hasidim is they're much more outgoing and they are more friendly and they try to recruit people. Is that true?
The Hasidim? It really depends. Because the Hasidim, say again, Joette? Lubavitcher. So, yes, it depends on which group of Hasidim mostly that you're talking to. You have a number of different groups, and they are associated with different parts of Eastern Europe. Lubavitcher, which is the one you know best, which is Chabad. Chabad is very welcoming and outgoing. Chabad will take you in if you are Jewish and you know nothing about being Jewish, and they say, "Oh, good, come on down, we'll teach you." And they will be very patient with you and teach you about Judaism. Other groups are very insular, and they keep only to themselves, and they are not interested in having outside groups. Why? Why would the Hasidim not be interested in general, except for Lubavitcher, in having outside groups? Because it would water down their Judaism. That's right. It would contaminate, water down, and this is a problem for some groups of Jews. So they keep to themselves, and they don't want to have any outside. Plus, you know, in modern times, the Hasidim have also moved very slowly to bring in secular subjects in school. But for a long time, they didn't want to bring in astronomy, mathematics, science, etc. Why? Because those question our religion. Question if you're looking at philosophy, good Lord, question the existence of God. Oh, no, we're not doing that. Right? We're not bringing in secular knowledge. Everything we need is in the Torah and the Talmud. Done. Can you recognize the different groups by the way they dress? Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Oh, they have different hats. Yes, for sure. And different socks. Yes. Length of pants. Yes. Zisel.
Yes, I like to point out something to which I experienced. I served 4 years in the United States Coast Guard, and there was, in one of my ships, there was another Jewish guy, and there was a cook. Nice guy. However, unfortunately, his only experience with Jews was in upstate New York, where he came from, probably, by the description, an Orthodox community. And this fellow, nice person, was already set against Jews because they were insular, they didn't mix, they were not friendly, etc., etc. You know, when he described that to me, I knew exactly. It was an Orthodox community. However, there were another Jewish sailor, same ship with me. His name was Harry. And this fellow's last name was Sackett. So I said, but Sackett, look, Harry and I are Jewish. His answer was classic. He says, yes, but you are different. He didn't say anything else. He said, yes, but you are different.
Okay.
That's what insularism is about.
I have a lot of experience with Chabad shuls, and there are two kinds. There's the outreach and the shuls for Hasidim, for Lubavitchers. And the ones that are outreach are very friendly, a lot of singing, joyfulness. And there's still joyfulness in the Chabad shul, but the amount of singing is almost nil. It is, let's get through the davening as quickly as we can. And the emphasis has moved to, within Lubavitch, intense learning. So they've gone back the other way.
Yes, it is. It is. Let's get through the davening as quickly as we can. When my father died, Chabad near my house is right around the corner, and because they desperately needed people for a daily minyan, So I went every morning to say Kaddish for my dad. And when we got to Kaddish in the service, it would be Yitkadava Yitkadash Shemer blah blah blah, and I was like not having any of that, none of that. I'm like, look, I'm only here. I am here to say Kaddish for my dad, and we're not racing through it. So I would sit there, Yitkadal v'Yitkadash Shemer Rabbah, and there Yitkadal v'Yitkadash, and I was like loud, and I made them slow down. And it's like, oh, no, we're not doing that. My dad needs this Kaddish, and I'm going to make sure it gets heard. Okay. So, in 1795, we have what's called the Third Partition, and Lithuania becomes part of Russia. In 1800, does 1800 in Russia ring a bell for anyone? That's Catherine the Great. Catherine the Great is very important to our people in a bad way. Because what does Catherine the Great do? No Jews living in Russia, in Russia proper. No, if you're a Jew, you may not be in Russia. However, she had just inherited this large piece of real estate, very large piece of real estate, Poland, Lithuania, because in the Third Partition, it became part of Russia. So all of a sudden now she has a whole bunch of Jews. So what does she do? Very good, very good. She relegates them to a piece of land called the Pale. So the Pale of Settlement, that's how this happens. It is at the very western part of Russia, with Poland and Lithuania right there. And, excuse me, all the Jews are put into that area. Now, we should point out the Pale of Settlement was not only Jews living there. There were lots of people living there. Jews just happened to live there in large numbers because they had to. And this is the time of Fiddler on the Roof. These are the shtetls. These are the very poor merchant towns. And the Pale of Settlement continues all the way up through World War I. And it gets overrun in World War I, and then no more Pale of Settlement. Was Belarus part of the Pale of Settlement? I do not believe so. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. So Catherine the Great establishes that in 1800, and that's a very important part of our history, of course. In the late 1800s, 1881, this is after Catherine the Great, one of her descendants, Tsar Alexander II, is assassinated. And it is blamed on Jews, but it was very clearly not done by Jews. There was like one slight tangential connection between one of the guys who did it and somebody who was Jewish somewhere. It was one of those things. But it was blamed on the Jews, and that led to incredible persecution and pogroms in Russia and Eastern Europe. This is why, starting in 1881, you have so many Jews from Eastern Europe and Russia fleeing the persecution and going to either Israel or the United States. This is when the Aliyot to Israel start. Yes. And so what does that mean for Israel? Who is in charge of Jerusalem and in Israel in general at this time? In 1881, the Ottoman Empire. So, who were the majority population by far in Jerusalem and everywhere else? Muslim Arabs, yes. You had some Jews. You always had some Jews in Jerusalem. Very pious Jews who were studying, but they were, compared to the normal population, they were like one tiny little bittieth of the general population. So now you are a Muslim Arab living in Jerusalem, and these Jews start coming. And they start saying, we're going to start building up our ancient homeland. We're going to do this. We're going to do, and you're like, what? What? No, 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 no. And little by little, successive waves of Jews came, and that upset the balance of population. As soon as the Arabs, the Muslim Arabs, and again, we have to be very careful, we distinguish between Arab and Muslim. Not all Arabs are Muslims. Most, but not all. And clearly, not all Muslims are Arabs. All of Indonesia, I mean, okay. So we have to just be careful there. And as soon as that balance of population became threatened, and there were more Jews than Muslim Arabs, all heck broke loose. They were getting pushed out, and they were selling lots of land to these new Jews who came in. And so the land ownership, the balance of land ownership was changing. So that's really the entire problem, basically, is who's the majority population. As long as the Arabs were the majority population, it's okay, we could deal with this. As soon as there was a threat to that, oh, no, 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 no. Okay. So, Lithuania becomes, the Lithuanian Republic is occupied by the Soviet Union in 1940. And then, of course, Germany comes in 1941. So 90%, 90% of the Jews in Lithuania were murdered during the Holocaust. It is the highest percentage of any country. All the main synagogues were destroyed. The synagogue in Vilnius was apparently a sight to behold. It was just gorgeous. In 1944, the Soviets annex Lithuania. In 1990, Lithuania becomes independent from Russia. So in 2001, there were 4,007 Jews in Lithuania. In 2011, there were 3,050. In 2021, there were 2,200, and 41% of them were over 60 years old. A nice thing is that there was an increase in the interest in learning Yiddish. So Yiddish was kept alive a little bit. One of the things that Lithuania is very famous for is its wooden synagogues. And if you go online and look at these, they look like little cabins in the woods. And they're all wooden synagogues, and they're old, and they haven't been maintained. Some have been, used as storage sheds now and things like that. But and there is a move to preserve them as best possible. By August 8, 2019, there was only one synagogue left in Vilnius, not the grand one. Excuse me. In August 8, 2019, over safety issues, they closed what was left of a synagogue in Vilnius. And now there are 12 small synagogues, including, obviously, Chabad. So Lithuania has a very tragic story regarding Jews. It was like the center of Jewish learning in Eastern Europe for so many centuries. It was an amazing place for Jews. And then, as we know, steady declines, and World War II decimated that community. Now, what happened to Catherine the Great is exactly what happens to Hitler down the road, right? So Poland and Lithuania get annexed to Russia. Catherine the Great inherits lots of Jews. What do I do with these Jews? I'm going to keep them right here in this area. They're just going to live right there, and I'm not going to deal with them. When Hitler moves through Eastern Europe, when he invades Poland, Hitler inherits millions of Jews. Up until Poland, remember, Hitler's plan A, we're going to make life so difficult for them they leave. They didn't. Why? Because they were German Jews. They thought of themselves as Germans who happened to practice Judaism. And things can't get much worse than they are. We're going to sit this out. It'll go away. Everything will be fine. And obviously it didn't. By Kristallnacht, it was very clear we're in deep trouble. And by then, all roads out had been closed. So Hitler inherits this huge population of Polish Jews, which was the largest population in Europe, Jewish population in Europe at the time. What do? Plan A, make life difficult for them. Okay, that's not working. Plan B, maybe ship them all off to Madagascar. No, we can't do that. Britain is controlling the seas. And it isn't until he inherits all the Jews from Poland that the final solution comes up, because it's like, oh, what do? We just have to kill them. So the same thing that happened to Catherine the Great happens to Hitler later on, obviously with catastrophic repercussions. Yes, Cecil.
Just a little historical tale here. World War II, when Hitler began his shenanigans, the Jewish youth wanted to fight, be part of the partisans. The elders said, no, this will pass, like everything else. So most of the incipient rebellion against Nazism was squashed. Only after it was seen what the Nazis are doing, the remaining youth says, the hell with the elder, we're fighting. And you had, of course, the famous, the capital of Poland, the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. So anyhow, caution is important, but caution has to be tempered with reality.
Thank you. Okay. We have some more comments.
I want to go back to Lithuania. So do you know why? Okay, do you all know why Lithuania had the most Jews killed? Didn't you say that? Yes. Do you all know why? Do you know that the Lithuanians helped? They didn't help. They precipitated Hitler. They killed the Jews before Hitler even got there. And there's a whole movie about that we saw at a temple, Ramat Zion, by a person who, it's a whole story. I mean, you should all know the story. Do you want to tell the story? Do you remember it? Huh? You know the story? Well, there is a young man growing up in South Africa. At the same time, a young woman is growing up in Chicago. She's from Lithuania. Her family's from Lithuania. But she's taught all the customs, the language, everything. She's growing up in Chicago, but she's like so connected. And she's told her grandfather was a huge war hero. And her mother is going to write a book about the grandfather, but the mother dies, and she asks her daughter to write this book. And the daughter gets into the history of the Lithuanian people. And at the same time, this young man who's growing up in South Africa, he has a grandfather who made it out of Lithuania. He escaped. His grandfather knew the supposed war hero, who was not a war hero after all, who actually was a precipitator of killing the Jews there. So she finds out the truth, and he is finding out the truth, and she's writing a book about her grandfather, which is not a very happy book. And he gets in touch with her, and he winds up making a movie about this happening. And you can all see this movie. If I could remember the name of the movie, I can't remember it, but I'll find that for you. And it was an incredible story. They became friends through talking, and they eventually met each other. And they showed this movie that this Jewish man from South Africa had made about his grandfather and about her grandfather. And that's the story. Do you know that?
Very nice. Did you want to say something? Okay. Very nice. Yes. He lived from 1720 to 1797. What were the dates of the Vilna Gaon? Wow. Wow. Okay. Yes.
My grandmother came from Lithuania sometime around 1900.
Your grandmother came from Lithuania sometime around 1900.
That's all I know. I don't know any more than that. But she came here and she landed in Chicago.
Landed in Chicago.
Somebody and married him.
And she found someone and married him. Good for her. Yes. Yes.
The point is, she lived out of Lithuania. She left Lithuania way before all that other stuff happened.
She left Lithuania before all that other stuff ever happened. Yeah. So what was her maiden name? Do you remember?
Yes, she was Kaplan.
Kaplan. Okay. Nice.
When the Jews started leaving Lithuania, did more of them go to Israel-Palestine, or did more of them come to the States?
Any thoughts? More to the States, for sure. Some to Israel, but that happened more after 1881. Yes, and that happened mostly from Russia and Eastern Europe, where Jews who could get away got away. Mostly U.S., some Israel. Remember, Israel was the United States was the golden Medina. The streets were paved with gold. Israel was harsh. In 1881, what was Israel like? It was not built up at all. It was sandy, it was hot, there were swamps, it was mosquitoes, it was just like, Israel was not a hospitable place.
Mark Twain traveled to Israel when he was not Israel, and in his writings he said it was a desolate country, didn't find anybody. And read it. It's really interesting to see the transformation.
Yes. Okay, let us segue now into India. Let's move over to India. Yes.
How many Jews are in Lithuania now, and how many
So in Lithuania, the last count was 2256. 41% of them are 60 years or older. And there are apparently 12 smaller synagogues, including Chabad.
Are they all in Vilnius?
No, they're in various areas within Lithuania.
Are there any in Vilnius?
Yes, there's apparently one, but the big one, the beautiful one, over safety issue, had to close in 2019, they said.
Was that physical safety of the building or safety of people going in?
I think safety of people going in and out.
Are you saying 2,256?
Correct. 2,256. Okay, let's hear from some people who have been to India and maybe have taken a tour or learned about the Jews of India. That's one group. There are a bunch of groups. Yes, and that's the one we're going to look at. So, somebody.
She did a presentation on it.
Okay. So, give us 2 minutes on what you learned about Jews in India.
Well, what I had learned was more of because I had done research on it, the fact that the Jews were there from after the destruction of the temple. They were traders, and they had gone to the western coast, I think Goa area of India, and they did a lot of trading. And the fact, what you had mentioned before, that Hebrew was being used, among the traders throughout the world at the time. So it was very easy for them to move around, and they could communicate with each other. But when Gary and I had gone to India, it was quite a few years ago. When was it? Do you recall? 2 years ago. Well, no, I mean, it doesn't matter. Actually, we went twice to India, the north, and that we started out in the south. And the south there's a community there. What's the name of it? Chennai? Yeah, Chennai, and a lot of the Jews had lived there, but they made Aliyah because by the time we got there, there was just one woman by the name, what was her name? Sarah, and she was like 100 years old, and she was ready, to pass on to the other world. But they called the area, it's really interesting. We went there, and they called it Jewtown. Were you there?
No,
Not in that area, but there were signs that said Jewtown. So this is where the Jews had lived for quite a bit of time. And they have a synagogue there. But it's not run by Jews, of course, which is not unusual. Did you want to say something?
So when I was there, I was in Cochin, and Cochin is very famous for having a large Jewish community at its height. There aren't any Jews left in Cochin, but there is a beautiful synagogue, which is the most popular tourist attraction in Cochin. And many cruise ships stop there because it's on the coast, and so a lot of people come and visit. And what I remember of it is that the interior of the synagogue was mostly white with blue decorations. Do you remember? Yes. And I couldn't believe the number of people who were coming to see this. I mean, it was a very famous site. The whole neighborhood had been a Jewish neighborhood. It was no longer, but now it's a very popular tourist attraction in the city of Cochin. Everybody goes to see the synagogue. No, I mean, the room was probably smaller than this room. So.
Actually, we were there and we met Sarah, and she was about 100 years old. And she had two Indian, people taking care of her. Of course, they weren't Jewish. They were so solicitous of her. They were so wonderful. I had a picture taken. I have a picture with her. For some reason, I don't know what, it got to me so. For some reason, I just got to me when I met her, and we took a pic. I just started to cry. I couldn't stop crying. I guess I didn't expect to meet like a person that looked like my grandmother or somebody. You know, we're in India. And we're in this town with all these Jewish artifacts. It was the most incredible thing. And could I segue back to where I found the guy's name is Grant Goshen, and the name of the film, the documentary he did, is called J'accuse. So if anybody wants to look it up, it's an incredible film. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
I'd like to share a story that I read I'm a member of the Jewish War Veterans, because I'm a veteran, and read a story written by a GI, Jewish, World War II veteran, and it goes something like this. The U.S., World War II, the U.S. is moving, United States Army is moving east, the Russians are moving, east, they're moving west. So they happen to meet somewhere in Germany, and picture this long 2 lines of soldiers on either side, and they stopped looking at each other because they didn't know what to do. Are they friends? Are they enemies? What do we do? And the writer of the story was a quick-thinking young man, and he quickly scanned all the opposing Russian soldiers until he detected a Jewish face. So immediately he started talking Yiddish to him, and it was a response. And they started being friendly. The 2 lines were already, hey, this is okay. Before too long, everybody's exchanging cigarettes, photographs of their families, and what could have been a terrible confrontation turned out to be a friendly reunion of comrades in arms.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you. Okay, so let's do 2 minutes on sort of a basic summary of India, and then we're going to watch a short film, a short DVD, and then we can take a break. Is that okay with you, Rose? It's entirely up to you, folks. Maybe that's probably the better idea. That's probably a better idea. So let me leave you with this before the break. So there are 7 different groups of Jews living in 7 different cities, or there were, in India, right? And so what happened was, in 1498, Vasco da Gama from Portugal sails, and he lands on the western coast of India. And the Portuguese claimed the southwest coast as a territory. It's called the Malabar Coast, and it belonged mostly to what was called at that time the Kingdom of Cochin. The eastern part was declared a territory by the French. Southeastern part here was French territory. And Goa was the capital of the Portuguese part. In 1757, Great Britain comes in and establishes India as a British colony. In the 1940s, there were about 20,000 Jews in India. What changed that was the establishment of the State of Israel. Almost all the Jews went to Israel in 1948, massive immigration. And what was really nice was that during the entire time Jews were in India, they did not experience anti-Semitism from the Hindu majority population. They lived peacefully. Now, I have the figures that there are maybe 5,000 Jews left in all of India at the moment. But maybe your travels have indicated not so much. But the last research I saw said there were a few thousand left in India. Where is the what? The Silk Road. Ah, the Silk Road. You know what? I don't know. I will have to look that up. I can do it during the break. Yes.
So it really got people in India.
We had a speaker at my synagogue in New York, and I can't remember her name now. She was there twice. But what got Jewish people into India was 1,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. They came from Baghdad, and they came to India, and there were some major cities at that time. And a lot of the modern stuff isn't, I can't go into, I don't remember it, but this woman, her family was from India, and she davened, and the sounds were just a little bit different, and she wrote a book, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but the history is that they really went to India from Baghdad 1,000 years ago.
Thank you. This is one group that we will be talking about. They are called Baghdadi Jews in India. And as I said, we have 7 groups to talk about. Yes?
Unfortunately, I remember like maybe 10 years ago, there was this young Chabad couple who was murdered by Muslim terrorists. In India, I think Chabad couple, yes. Young with the children who were, they are now in Israel, and the couple was, unfortunately, it doesn't last forever, the peace.
Yeah. So let me just end with this, and then we'll take our break. So today, there are estimated about 85,000 Indian Jews in Israel, from all of these different groups. And, you know, when Israel was established, these Jews, these Indian Jews, or these Indian people who trace their lineage back, we're going to find out about all that, thought, oh, I'm going to go and reestablish myself in my ancient homeland where our ancient people lived, et cetera, et cetera. The problem was that Israeli society has not been very welcoming to Indian Jews. They face a lot of discrimination. The dark color of their skin and the fact that they didn't speak Hebrew was a very real problem for them. So they were discriminated against terribly. Some went and left and went back to India. That's, I'm sure, how there's some population because of the discrimination in Israel. I think we would all like to believe, we would all like to hope, we would all wish that Israeli society would be very welcome, but we know the Israeli society is also very discriminatory towards Ethiopian Jews. So it's an unfortunate fact that these people who identified themselves as Jews, were not welcomed with open arms in Israel, and in fact face, even today, some pretty significant discrimination. Okay, let's take a break. How long is our break? 10 minutes? Okay, so it's now 11 o'clock basically, 10:58. Let's come back at 11:10 and we will watch the movie.
Did these Indian Jews look different from the couple they were from? Oh, is that right?
Fun fact, first time we went to Israel, I wore a cowboy hat. And when the goods were scary, as people came running from behind me, up to look, what set did it belong to?
That's funny. Your own special sect.
Exactly.
The American sect. Wow.
Line dancing.
recently, there was something on TV about the Menashe Jews. There are now 5,000 of them living in Israel. They don't all live together, and when this war just broke out, many of them were sent to Jerusalem, where they had never been before. And it was on TV. I happened to catch it, and I thought that was so interesting. But my cousin Pepe had talked to these people that you saw on film who were in Israel, and they made arrangements for an El Al airline to come and bring these people, and whoever wanted to go and settle there. Their main goal is to be buried, to die, and to be buried in Israel. That was the main goal for them. And I think there were over 2,000 that went the first time, and just recently, they allowed more to come in. An El Al airline was sent to bring them in, and Israel called the plane back. They didn't want any more of the Menashes. But now they are coming in, and there are 5,000 of them. It was recently on the news, so I was so thrilled and so excited about it. But you could tell that my cousin Paula, Pepe's wife, who was there, sort of looked a little dismayed. She came down with Alzheimer's. She was a professor at Northwestern and teaching the women's movement and also the black movement. And she passed away with Alzheimer's. And then Pepe just died maybe 2 months ago. He and I are the same age. He used to tease me and call me his older cousin. And then when his birthday came around in June, I'd always call him. But this year he finally passed away. And the woman that you saw on there, I think she's from New Mexico. I'm not sure. But he got her involved in this. And so she is still alive, and she's still active with getting these people into Israel. And there are now 5,000 of them that live there. But they don't all live together, which is interesting. So, well, some have moved. The original ones live in one place, and I guess when the new ones come in, wherever they can settle, that's where they go. I don't know exactly. That's very pretty. Anyhow, that's my story.
Thank you very much, and thank you for lending us that beautiful DVD to talk about. So, the Bnei Menashe, the children of Manasseh, wasn't that Joseph's son? Yes, along with Ephraim. And there was also a Bnei Ephraim, but the Bnei Menashe are one of 7 different groups of Jews from India. And we're going to go one by one and talk about these different groups, where they lived and how they got there, because they're made up of different ancestries of Jews: Sephardic, Ashkenazic, Mizrahi. And so at their height, there were about 10,000 Bnei Menashe in their area. And the area that they're talking about for the Bnei Menashe is here. So the group that we just talked about, or that we just saw the movie about, this is where they are from, northeastern India. And they trace their lineage back to an ancestor whose name was Manmassi, whom they equate with Manasseh. And they claim ancestry, Jewish ancestry, through Manasseh, who was one of Joseph's sons. So, as we said, in 2005, they are recognized as part of the lost tribe of Manasseh. In terms of DNA, it's inconclusive. The DNA from these tribes, from these people, show that there's some kind of Near Eastern linkage. But that's about it. So it's kind of inconclusive. But as you saw on the DVD, Jewishness doesn't go by DNA. That doesn't determine your DNA. But it's interesting that, you know, there's some kind of Near Eastern DNA involved, and the fact that they have traditions that are so close to some of ours makes it a very interesting story, for sure. Did somebody have a, yes? Your maiden name is Menashe. Yes, very good, very good. Your parents were from Turkey, sure. All right, so we won't be able to finish today, but let's start with the other 6 groups of Jews. The oldest group of Jews in India were the Jews of Cochin that Joette was talking about earlier, and that I think, Gary, you said you had visited. Okay. It's the oldest group of Jews in India, and they are from this area here. Whoops, I'm going to use blue. This used to be called the Kingdom of Cochin, and it was Portuguese territory. According to legend, they arrived, these Jews from Cochin, with King Solomon's traders. Okay, that was a long time ago. The first documentation that we have of their existence is in the 12th century, so that's the 1100s. We have mention of the Jews of Cochin. There were some Sephardic who came after the expulsion in 1492. We're going to see a lot of that in the various groups. And there were, these Jews, the Sephardim who came after the expulsion, were called Paradesi Jews. Paradesi is from their local language, and it means foreign. So they were foreign. They were classified as foreign Jews, and they spoke Ladino, of course. But what they learned from the Jews of Cochin was a special language called Judeo-Malayalam. Malayalam was a recognized regional language within India, a recognized Indian language. And so, like Yiddish and Ladino, the Hebrew mixed in with the language, and they spoke a mixture of both languages. But these Paradesi Jews remained a distinct community from the Jews of Cochin. They didn't all come together and live together. They were distinct communities. In the 19th century, we're talking about the 1800s, then Baghdad, where did Janice go? Oh, back there. Then Baghdadi Jews, and we're going to talk about them in a minute, from Syria joined, and they came and joined the Paradesi community, so they were considered foreign Jews as well. Of course, in 1947 with the partition plan, and then in 1948 with the creation of the State of Israel, mass emigration out into other places. The Jews from the southwest of India, the Malabari Jews, far and away went to Israel. That was the place they went to. The Paradesi Jews went to Australia. So they went to Australia, yep. Yeah. This was in 1947. There were 8 synagogues in Cochin. There's only one that still has a congregation. So is that with the one that you? It's not operative anymore. Is that the only synagogue there, or there are others? Okay. The second set of Jews are from the city of Madras. You'll see here at the bottom right. And they were Spanish and Portuguese Jews fleeing the Inquisition. They were also Paradesi Jews and British Jews. They arrived later than the other groups in the 16th century, in the 1500s, and their profession was mostly in diamonds. There were, as we said, a number of Sephardic families fleeing the Inquisition in 1492. They spoke Ladino. And as they came to India, they learned to speak Judeo-Malayalam. Again. So that seems to be sort of a thread that runs through all the Jewish communities there. They had their own special language, the Jews of India. Then you had a third group of Jews at the bottom right here. And I'm guessing that's Najer Koil. I mean, that's what it looks like. I don't know how it is pronounced in the language. But these were mostly Syrian Jews and North African Jews. And they arrived in 52 CE. 52 CE. Most of them were merchants. Why did they settle there? Why did they come there? Because it has a great climate, number one, and because there were many, many Christian merchants there at the time. So remember, that area was French, right? It was a French territory. Not in 52 BCE, obviously, but later on. It had a great climate, and they had a lot of Christian merchants, which would facilitate trade and allow them to excel in their professions. Eventually, in the 20th century, these Jews make their way to Cochin, and then to either Australia or Israel. Then you have a fourth community in Goa. You see just above there with the blue on the left in Goa. And they were Sephardic Jews from Spain and Portugal, again fleeing the Inquisition. They were mostly conversos. And the reason why they went to India is because it was easier to stay Portuguese subjects in a foreign land than it was to go all the way to the Ottoman Empire and learn a new language and adapt to a new civilization. Why did they go to India? Because remember, this southwest side was Portuguese territory. But they felt that going to a place so far away from Portugal that it would be hard for the Inquisition to find them and prosecute them there. They spoke Castilian, Spanish, and they liked it because even though they were conversos, there were the other Jewish communities around, and they could collaborate with them and be involved with them. The problem is that the Portuguese Inquisition came to Goa in 1561. And so these Jews from Goa, these Portuguese Jews from Goa, had to flee to other parts of India that were not under Portuguese control. All right. Then we have the B'nai Israel, the children of Israel, and their name were in the native language was the Shani Vertele, which means the Saturday oil pressers. For obvious reasons, they would light candles for Shabbat. They are from Karachi, which is now in Pakistan, obviously. And they considered themselves part of the 10 lost tribes, and they traced their ancestry back to Jews who fled after Antiochus Epiphanes invaded. Now, who is Antiochus Epiphanes? That's our Maccabee story, okay? Antiochus Epiphanes was the Seleucid ruler in the east who wanted Israel. Also, the Ptolemaic dynasty in the west wanted Israel because it's right at the center and the crossroads and everything. So the Antiochus Epiphanes, that's the bad guy in our Maccabee story for Hanukkah. So it's very appropriate, right? The problem is there's no evidence to support their claim. It's just a story that they have told amongst themselves. They went mostly to Mumbai, which most of us know as Bombay. I know it's Mumbai, but we all learned it as Bombay growing up. And it's like, what? They changed it? And this is very interesting. They moved there mostly in the 19th century. In the 20th century, many Jews from this community became successful actors and film producers. And in 1948, many immigrated to Israel. And what does the DNA show? Some kind of Middle Eastern origin, but a lot of assimilation along the way. There were about 6,000 in 1830. There were 10,000 during the 20th century, and there were about 3,500 in Mumbai in 2020. Oh, we went through this very quickly. Okay, it's 12 o'clock now. Can I still have like 3 minutes and we can finish this up? Good. And our last group are the Baghdadi Jews. And they lived in Surat. And they came in the 18th and 19th century, and they settled along the trade routes. Baghdadi, Syrian Jews, Mizrahi Jews. And they were speaking Judeo-Arabic, which we know many of the Jewish communities in that part of the world spoke, Judeo-Arabic. And they flourished under British rule, and eventually that community becomes English-speaking and very British. They established many trading posts with China and around the Southeast Asia. However, World War II came and many of those trade routes were severed, especially through China. Almost all of them immigrated to Great Britain mostly. That would make sense because they were very British. And so you have very famous families in England, the Rubens, the Sassoons, and they were very prominent in business and politics. And these were originally Jews from Syria and surrounding regions who came over in the 18th, 19th century and settled in India. in my research, I didn't see anything in Calcutta. Yeah, that was a little surprising. You're right. Yeah. All right. So that's the Jews of India. You have distinct groups all throughout, most of whom immigrated to either Israel, Britain, Australia. And so, again, the estimates that I saw said there were about 5,000 total Jews in India now, from various groups, but probably mostly the B'nai Menashe, which we saw our DVD on today. All right, everyone, thank you so much. And I wish you all a miracle-filled Hanukkah. Thank you. Thank you.
I apologize to those of you online that you couldn't hear, and for those of you here, I can put the DVD on my computer, and I will be sure that there will be a way for you to hear it better. And I'm so sorry it didn't occur to me. We could have put the microphone by the speaker, and it would have, and I know, we should have thought of it, but I will absolutely make it available to you out there, and to you. Thank you, Rabbi, and to you here. So, we'll figure it out. Well.
other things too.
I know, thank you. So, I guess we're not playing next week, following week at Gillette.
Yeah, next week.